Oh, Variant Big Mike, we did it. We enchanted the giant cloud monster, and now we get to see who is behind the TVA. You know what? I think we made a good team. Why, yes. I think we really did. I think we really did. Oh! Oi! I thought we had a moment. Oh yeah, we did have a moment. A disgusting one. See, look at yourself. You're nasty.
Welcome to Big Mike's Real Reviews. I am Big Mike, and today I'm covering the season finale of Loki, entitled For All Time, Always. Now, I will say that this episode was not my favorite episode. I don't know if it was my least favorite. It might be tied with my least favorite. But it did give us a lot of information. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a bad episode at all. My thoughts were just like, it wasn't as action-packed as a lot of the other episodes. It wasn't as entertaining and funny, I would say, but it did give us a lot of information. So what I'm going to do is rate this episode now. I think I'm going to give this episode a solid 8. I did enjoy the episode, though. 8's pretty high still. So I did enjoy the episode, but I do want to go over like the things that happened in this episode and how it is going to affect the Marvel Cinematic Universe from here on out, because it is this episode is a game changer for the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So again, I give this an 8, and now I'm going to drop my spoiler warning. You have been warned. If you have not watched the episode, go ahead and watch it. Come back to my video, and we're going to discuss it right now. So we start out, of course, like every other episode, right where the last one left off. Sylvie and Loki get to this citadel. They go in, or actually, the door opens by itself. As they're walking in, they're looking around, and the first reveal was Miss Minute shows up. And I knew for a fact that Miss Minutes wasn't going to be the big bad, but that she worked, right under the big bad. She knew everything that was going on, which she did. And we still don't know what kind of AI she is, but anyway, she works directly under the main antagonist of this series, and who, not this particular one as we speak, is going to be the main antagonist of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to come, but she lets him in and says, hey, he has a deal for you guys. So when they get to the person in charge, she said, he who remains. Okay, so I was like, okay, he who remains. That's comic accurate. He who remains was at the end of time, which they are, and he created the timekeepers and the TVA to keep the timeline going. Okay, but there was a little variation or deviation for that. Well, variation because he's a variant. So he's a variant of Kang the Conqueror. We see Jonathan Majors, which a lot of people, including myself, kind of figured, because even when we were during WandaVision and everybody's screaming Mephisto, right? There was no talk of Mephisto. There was no casting for Mephisto or anything like that. So this one made a little bit more sense. Jonathan Majors was already cast as Kang the Conqueror. They just said he was supposed to premiere in Quantumania, the third Ant-Man movie. So we see Jonathan Majors, and he is he who remains. And he knows how everything is going to play out, apparently. And he's trying to give Loki and Sylvie a deal, basically. He's basically telling them that, hey, look, you have two options. You can kill me, and things are going to get really bad. He said, because worse things are going to come than me. He was like, yes, I'm not saying that what I've been doing is great, but it keeps the timeline, in order, basically. And the TVA, all that keeps the timeline in order. He was like, you've done horrible things. You've done horrible things. Everybody in this room, we've done horrible things. We're all variants. And That's just what it is. But what I'm doing is keeping everything in check. Okay. So Loki and Sylvie are debating it. Loki more so says, hey, I'm a liar. I know that he is a liar as well. That's why I know what's going on. And this is why in this instance, he's telling the truth. So Sylvie doesn't exactly see it that way. Loki and Sylvie fight a bit. He actually stops Sylvie for a second. And Sylvie is like, hey, I'm not like you. And she pushes Loki through one of the time portals back to the TVA. Okay. And she has her mind made up. She's going to take care of Kang the Conqueror. Now, in between all this, we see B-15 trying to wake up some of the other Minutemen. And they go to the high school that a lot of people also thought that Ravonna Renslayer came from, because we all know their variants. So she was a principal at that high school. And she showed the other Minuteman, hey, look, this is all a farce. Trying to explain we're all variants here. Let's tell the truth. You need to know this. So when Loki gets back to the TVA, we see that, he goes to talk to Mobius and B-15, and they have no clue who he is or what's going on. He's trying to tell them everything. I've seen He Who Remains. I've seen everything. It's about to get really bad, blah, blah, blah. And Mobius is like, who are you? You're an analyst, right? Like, who are you? What's going on? And Loki's like, whoa, wait. So we find out back at the Citadel, Sylvie was like, she was determined. She takes out he Who Remains. Okay, she takes He Who Remains out, and he says, see you soon. Now that was a reference to the story he told them before. He had this little temporal device on his arm, and he told the story of himself. Basically that he's from the 31st century, which is comic accurate, because his name is Nathaniel Richards in the comics. And he is from the 31st century, or that version of him, or one version of him, because there's many versions of Kang. And even as he's explaining, he said he's gone by many names. He's been a ruler, a conqueror. He's saying all these things. So we know this isn't the Kang that's going to be the main bad. This is a variant of him. And he basically did tell them, hey, look, I was from the 31st century. I found out about the multiverse. And at the same time that I found out about the multiverse, different variants of myself all found out about the multiverse. So it's kind of like a Rick Sanchez thing from Rick and Morty, where it's like, hey, all these Ricks come together. But at first he said like they were all pretty cordial. He was like, hey, they started meeting up and like, hey, I like your lab coat. Hey, I like your notes. You're cool. And they were all buddy for a time. But then they referenced the multiversal war that happened that they explained in the first episode, or Miss Minutes explained in the first episode, which was in the propaganda video. And we find out that was all variants of Jonathan Major's character, who at the time, and they even put like some Kang-esque, costumes on him, to where it was basically all variants of Kang fighting each other. And then the version of He Who Remains, I guess, he said, hey, I'm going to start up this TVA thing and kind of keep this all in balance so this doesn't happen. So when Sylvie kills this version of Kang, which was He Who Remains, she set all this in motion where all the branch timelines just went crazy. Like back at the TVA, where you would see the branches before, there were just branches everywhere, all over the red, and there's nothing they can do about it at this point. So this is what leads into, I would say, directly into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But of course, we get Spider-Man No Way Home first. But this is where we get all of the craziness that's to come in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's why this episode was so integral in that, where this is going to change the face of the MCU for a long time to come. Because now we're going to get all kinds of versions of Kang who, which is not a good thing. So, and that's the thing, like in the final scene, we see where Loki's confused about how Mobius and B-15 don't know who he is. And he looks up and things have changed. So in the TVA before, we used to see all these statues of the timekeepers because He Who Remains was trying to, still hold that onto that illusion. But since Sylvie killed that version of him, is we see that things have changed already. And there's this huge statue of Jonathan Majors in the Kang getup, like as Kang the Conqueror. So it's like, ooh, things are really changed. And then we get a mid-credit scene where it's not really that big of a reveal because we already knew Loki season 2 was coming. But we see a file open and a stamp go down and it just says Loki will return in season 2. So there's a lot to think about here. There's a lot to speculate on what's to come. We saw the way that Marvel is approaching this from now on. It's going to be a huge multiversal thing. We're going to get a lot of things like, because the next series coming to Disney Plus is going to be What If, which we know is all different stories from different timelines and saying, you know, what if, which I think is basically just not even like what if this happened. These things are happening now in all these different branch timelines in the multiverse because now everything is crazy. So with that being said, this is going to bring this video to a close. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like. It's much appreciated. And don't forget to hit that bell to be notified of all my latest content. And once again, thanks for watching and see you next time.